Hello, Leo. Welcome back to this little space where we slow down, listen to our intuition, and explore the stories hidden beneath the surface. Today, there's a message coming through that feels impossible to ignore, because someone has been talking about you. Not just once, not casually, not in passing. You've been a topic of conversation in places you may know nothing about. And what makes this energy so interesting is that the more they talked about you, the more they revealed their true feelings without even realizing it. Some of what was said came from curiosity. Some came from confusion. Some came from people who never really understood this connection at all. But hidden beneath all of those conversations was a truth that kept finding its way back to the surface. So, if you've been feeling like something is happening behind the scenes, if you've felt someone's energy lingering around you even in silence, stay with me until the end of this reading. Because what I'm seeing here may explain far more than you realize. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had that strange feeling that someone was thinking about you, even when you had no proof? Just hold that thought for a moment, because the cards have a lot to say about that. Let's see what wants to come through today. Leo, I'm picking up on someone who has been talking about you a lot more than you realize. Honestly, it's almost becoming impossible for them not to bring you up. They may start a conversation about something completely unrelated, and somehow your name finds its way into it. Okay, that's the first thing I'm noticing here. The Six of Cups is sitting right in front of me, and this energy feels incredibly familiar. It's like this person keeps revisiting certain memories involving you. Little moments, small conversations, the way you laughed at something they said, the way you looked at them when nobody else was paying attention. These memories seem to surface when they least expect it. What's interesting is that they're not keeping these thoughts to themselves anymore. I'm seeing them talking to friends, talking to family members, talking to people they trust. For some of you, this could even be someone speaking with a counselor, a mentor, or somebody whose opinion they value. They're looking for answers, Leo, because something about you doesn't make sense to them. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, they're trying to understand why your energy affects them so deeply. The Page of Swords keeps drawing my attention here. This feels like someone asking questions. A lot of questions. What do you think about this? Have you ever felt this way about someone? Why can't I stop thinking about them? It almost feels like they're hoping somebody else can explain what they're experiencing because they haven't been able to explain it themselves. And every conversation seems to lead them back to the same place. You. The funny thing is that some of the people they're talking to don't fully understand what's happening. Some offer advice. Some offer opinions. Some tell them they're overthinking. But that doesn't stop them from bringing you up again. And again. And again. Because every time they speak your name out loud, they become a little more aware of what is happening inside their own heart. Oh my God, that's exactly what this feels like. The star is here. And what I'm hearing is that you represent something different, something rare. This person has met people before. They've dated people before. They've felt attraction before. But there is something about you that doesn't fit into the categories they've used their entire life. They keep comparing you to other experiences, and somehow the comparison never works. You stand apart. You feel separate from everyone else. That's why they keep discussing you. They're trying to find a logical explanation for something that feels emotional. They're trying to analyze something that their heart already understands. And the more they talk, the harder it becomes to deny what they're feeling. I keep hearing someone say, maybe it's nothing. But a few days later they're talking about you again. I don't know why this matters so much. Yet they're there bringing you into another conversation. It's almost becoming a pattern, a habit. A confession hidden inside ordinary discussions. Because every time someone asks them about you, they suddenly become more animated, more engaged, more emotional. Their voice changes. Their energy changes. The way they describe you changes. And people are beginning to notice. Some of them may have even pointed it out. They may have said something like, "You talk about Leo a lot." Or, "Are you sure this person isn't more important to you than you're admitting?" That kind of comment seems to linger in their mind long after the conversation ends. And that's where I see the King of Cups entering this reading. This person is trying very hard to stay composed, very hard to appear calm, very hard to convince themselves that everything is under control. But beneath the surface, their emotions are becoming much harder to ignore. Because every discussion about you seems to reveal another layer of truth. Every opinion they ask for somehow brings them closer to their own answer. And the answer they're slowly approaching isn't really about what other people think. It's about what they feel. That's why I'm getting the sense that these conversations are beginning to shift. The questions are changing. The focus is changing. And what started as curiosity may be turning into something much deeper than they originally intended to admit. What keeps standing out to me is that not every voice around this person had good intentions. That's where the energy begins to shift. Because at first, they were simply looking for answers. They wanted perspective. They wanted clarity. But somewhere along the way, outside opinions started becoming louder than their own intuition. The moment I look at the Three of Swords, I get this uncomfortable feeling that some of the conversations surrounding you are not supportive at all. In fact, some people seemed strangely invested in convincing this person to doubt what they felt. You know how sometimes you tell someone about a connection that's important to you, hoping they'll understand, and instead they immediately point out everything that could go wrong? That's what this feels like. Every concern became a warning. Every uncertainty became a reason to hesitate. Every difference between you became something to question. And little by little, those opinions started planting seeds inside this person's mind. The devil is sitting here, and honestly, what I'm seeing doesn't feel healthy. It feels like influence, pressure, fear, maybe even jealousy from certain people around them. Somebody didn't like how much attention this person was giving to you. Somebody didn't like how often your name came up. Somebody didn't like the changes they were seeing. Because before you came along, this person may have been easier to predict, easier to control, easier to keep inside familiar patterns. But your presence challenged something. You made them think differently. You made them feel differently. And not everyone was comfortable with that. Oh my God, I just heard someone saying, "You're moving too fast. Are you sure about this? What if they're not who you think they are?" Those kinds of comments lingered much longer than they should have. And the worst part is that this person trusted some of these people. They believed they were receiving honest guidance. They believed these conversations were helping. But the Seven of Swords tells a different story. Because the more I sit with this card, the more it feels like not everyone was being completely genuine. Some people were speaking from their own fears. Some were projecting their own disappointments. Some were judging a situation they never truly understood. And a few may have had motives they never openly admitted. This person couldn't see that at first. They thought they were gathering wisdom. They thought they were making responsible decisions. Meanwhile, doubt continued growing. Every hesitation created another delay. Every delay created more distance. And every bit of distance made it harder for them to understand what was actually happening between the two of you. Honestly, Leo, I don't even feel like their biggest mistake was listening to other people. Their biggest mistake was trusting those opinions more than what they experienced when they were with you. Because whenever they were around you, things felt different. Calmer. More natural. More real. Yet the moment they walked away and returned to those outside voices, confusion started all over again. The Five of Wands is showing me a person caught between too many influences. One friend says one thing. Another says something completely different. Family members have opinions. People who barely know the situation have opinions. Everybody seems to have something to say. Except the one person whose opinion mattered most. Yours. And that's beginning to bother them. A lot. Because they're starting to look back at certain conversations and realize how unfair some of them were. They're noticing how quickly people judged you. How easily people assumed things about you. How comfortable some individuals seemed when speaking negatively about a connection they didn't truly understand. The realization isn't arriving all at once. It's happening gradually, like someone waking up from a fog. They replay old discussions in their head and suddenly hear things differently. They notice the bitterness, the insecurity, the hidden agendas, things they completely missed before. And with every realization comes another uncomfortable truth. They may have allowed those voices to influence decisions that should have belonged to their own heart. That awareness is becoming difficult to ignore. Because once a person starts questioning the advice they received, they inevitably begin questioning every choice they made because of it. And that's exactly where I see this energy heading. They're beginning to wonder what would have happened if they had trusted themselves instead. They're beginning to wonder how much of this distance was created by fear. And they're beginning to look at you through a completely different lens than the one other people handed to them. Something has started changing inside this person, Leo. Not because somebody convinced them. Not because they suddenly received all the answers. What I'm seeing feels much more personal than that. It's happening in quiet moments. The moments when nobody is around. The moments when the conversations stop and they're left alone with their own thoughts. The hermit is showing up here, and I keep seeing someone replaying old memories from a completely different perspective. You know how sometimes you can look at the exact same situation 100 times and see one thing, and then one day you see something entirely different? That's what this feels like. They're revisiting moments involving you. Conversations. Choices. Opportunities. And honestly, they're beginning to realize they may have misunderstood you from the very beginning. I keep hearing them ask themselves, why was I so suspicious? Why did I question someone who was being genuine with me? Why did I assume the worst? Those questions seem to follow them everywhere lately. And the answers aren't comfortable, because every time they look back, they see evidence of your sincerity. Little things they overlooked, little things they dismissed, the way you showed up, the way you supported them, the way you tried to understand them when other people simply judged them. And suddenly those moments carry a completely different meaning. Oh my God, Leo. The sun is illuminating everything they couldn't see before. It's almost like someone opening the curtains after sitting in a dark room for a very long time. Details are becoming impossible to ignore. This person is beginning to understand that you were never trying to manipulate them. You weren't trying to control them. You weren't asking them to become someone else. You simply wanted honesty. You wanted consistency. You wanted a real connection. And the painful part is that they can see it now, much more clearly than before. I keep getting images of someone staring out a window, lost in thought. Not because they're confused anymore, because they're disappointed in themselves, because there are moments they wish they could revisit, words they wish they could take back, choices they wish they could make differently. The energy feels heavy, not dramatic, not chaotic, just deeply reflective. And that's where judgment enters this reading. This isn't somebody being forced to face the truth. This is somebody choosing to face it. That's an important difference. They're no longer hiding behind excuses. They're no longer blaming circumstances. They're no longer pointing fingers at outside influences. Instead, they're starting to acknowledge their own role in what happened. And honestly, that takes courage, because accountability is rarely comfortable, especially when it involves someone you genuinely care about. The more they reflect, the more they begin to recognize something unique about you. You inspired them, not through pressure, not through demands, but simply by being yourself. You challenged them to grow. You challenged them to think differently. You challenged them to question beliefs they had carried for years. And at first, they resisted that. They resisted because growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels liberating. But resistance is slowly giving way to understanding. The tower is here, and wow, this feels like one realization after another. A belief falls apart. Another belief follows. An old assumption crumbles. A false narrative disappears. And standing beneath all that debris is a truth they can no longer avoid. You were never the problem. In fact, some of the qualities they once questioned about you are becoming the very qualities they admire most. Your confidence, your warmth, your strength, your ability to remain authentic even when misunderstood. They're beginning to see those things differently now. Not as flaws, not as reasons to pull away, but as reasons they were drawn to you in the first place. And the deeper this awakening becomes, the harder it is for them to ignore what they've lost. Because awareness has a way of bringing regret with it. The more clearly they see your value, the more they recognize how often they failed to appreciate it. The more clearly they see your heart, the more they realize how guarded they were with theirs. There's a sadness attached to that realization. A quiet sadness. One that follows them into the late hours when everything else is silent. Because they know something now that they didn't know before. And what they're seeing is changing the entire story they've been telling themselves about you. The question is no longer whether you mattered. The question becoming impossible for them to escape is whether they waited too long to admit just how much you mattered. Fear has a strange way of growing in silence, Leo. The longer something remains unspoken, the heavier it becomes. And that's exactly where I see this person right now. The moon is the first card pulling my attention, and honestly, the atmosphere around this feels incredibly tense. Not because they're hiding their feelings anymore. It's deeper than that. They're worried about what happens when the full truth comes out. Because there are things they never told you. Things they never corrected. Things they allowed to happen. And lately, those memories have been following them everywhere. I keep seeing someone lying awake long after everyone else has gone to sleep. Their mind replaying conversations, replaying decisions, replaying moments where they could have spoken up, but didn't. Oh my God. It's almost like they're having arguments with themselves. One side says, just leave it alone. The other side says, they deserve to know. And neither side is winning. The Eight of Swords feels incredibly personal here. This person isn't trapped by you. They aren't trapped by circumstances. They're trapped by their own thoughts. Because every possibility seems frightening. If they stay silent, they risk losing you. If they tell the truth, they risk losing you. And that realization is creating enormous pressure. What keeps standing out is their fear that you may eventually hear everything from somebody else. Not from them. Not from a sincere conversation, but from a third party. From gossip. From someone with their own version of events. And honestly, that possibility terrifies them. Because they know how damaging that could be. They know there were moments when people spoke about you unfairly. Moments when assumptions were made. Moments when narratives were created that never reflected who you truly are. And what haunts them isn't only what was said. It's the fact that they didn't always defend you the way they should have. That truth is becoming impossible to ignore. I keep hearing someone say, I should have said something. I should have stopped it. I should have protected this connection. But hindsight has a way of arriving after the damage is already done. And that's where the guilt comes from. Not because they hated you. Not because they wanted to hurt you. But because they were too uncertain, too afraid, too influenced by other voices when it mattered most. The King of Cups is showing me someone carrying emotions they rarely reveal. From the outside, they may appear calm, composed, in control. But beneath that surface is an ocean of regret. You know, Leo, I don't think this person expected to care this much. I think they assumed time would solve everything. I think they assumed these feelings would eventually fade. But instead, the opposite happened. Distance gave them perspective. Silence gave them perspective. And perspective gave them accountability. They can no longer pretend they don't know what happened. They can no longer pretend they don't understand your disappointment. Because they understand it now. Very clearly. In fact, some of them may even be harsher on themselves than you would ever be. I keep seeing somebody imagining conversations that haven't happened yet. Practicing explanations. Rehearsing apologies. Trying to find the right words. Trying to find a way to explain choices that no longer make sense even to them. And every version seems incomplete. Every explanation feels inadequate. Because how do you explain allowing fear to influence something valuable? How do you explain doubting someone who is genuine? How do you explain realizing the truth too late? Strength appears here, and I have to be honest, this card feels different from the energy we've seen so far. Because for the first time, I'm seeing courage begin to emerge. Small at first, fragile, but growing. The kind of courage that comes from knowing you can't keep avoiding something forever. The kind of courage that comes from understanding that honesty may be painful, but deception is far worse. This person is reaching a point where protecting their secrets is becoming less important than protecting the possibility of having you in their life. And that's a major shift. Because up until now, fear has been making decisions. Fear of judgment. Fear of rejection. Fear of consequences. But another fear is starting to overpower all of those. The fear of never getting the chance to tell you the truth themselves. The fear of watching someone else reveal the story before they do. The fear of realizing they stayed silent for so long that there was nothing left to save. And the closer they get to that realization, the harder it becomes to keep carrying everything alone. Because there is something they need to say, Leo. something they've been holding back for much longer than they're willing to admit. And the weight of those unsaid words is becoming impossible for them to carry much longer. A decision is beginning to take shape, Leo. Not a perfect decision. Not one free of fear, but a real one. The energy shifts the moment the Knight of Wands appears. Because this person has spent so much time thinking, analyzing, questioning, replaying, and doubting that they're starting to exhaust themselves. At some point, a person reaches a place where thinking no longer provides answers. Action does. And that's where I see them standing, right on the edge between hesitation and movement. Honestly, I don't think they're comfortable there. I don't think they suddenly woke up fearless. If anything, they're still nervous, still uncertain, still worried about what you might say. But they're becoming even more afraid of doing nothing. I keep seeing somebody opening a message window and closing it, typing something, deleting it, starting over, walking away, coming back later. It's almost as if they're rehearsing the moment before it happens. Because reaching out feels different now. This isn't about curiosity anymore. This isn't about gathering opinions from other people anymore. This is becoming personal, deeply personal. The Wheel of Fortune feels like a turning point that they didn't expect to arrive so quickly. For a long time, they believed they had more time to figure things out, more time to decide, more time to avoid uncomfortable conversations. But something has changed. A realization has settled into their heart. Life doesn't wait forever. Opportunities don't remain untouched forever. People don't remain exactly where we left them forever. And that awareness is creating movement. Oh my God. I keep hearing them wonder what you're doing lately, who you're talking to, how much you've changed, whether you've already moved on emotionally from everything that happened. Because one thing they know for certain is that you are not the same person they first met. You've grown, you've evolved, you've healed parts of yourself. And that growth has not gone unnoticed. The Empress is showing up here in such a powerful way. Because the version of you they're seeing now carries a different energy. You don't feel like someone waiting for validation. You don't feel like someone chasing answers. You don't feel like someone begging to be chosen. You feel grounded, strong, confident. And strangely enough, that makes them admire you even more. What they once overlooked has become impossible to overlook. What they once took for granted now appears incredibly valuable. It's almost like they're finally seeing the full picture. Not just who you were, but who you've become. And that realization carries a mixture of admiration and regret. Because they understand something important now. Your value was never dependent on whether they recognized it. Your value existed all along. They were simply too distracted to see it. The King of Pentacles feels like a completely different version of this person beginning to emerge. Less reactive. Less influenced by outside opinions. More focused on substance. More focused on consistency. Because they don't want to approach you with empty promises. I don't see somebody wanting to impress you with grand speeches. I see somebody wanting to prove something through actions, through effort, through presence, through accountability. And honestly, Leo, that's a major difference. Because words were part of the problem before. Too many conversations, too many opinions, too many people talking. This person is beginning to understand that what matters most isn't what gets said behind closed doors. It's what gets demonstrated in real life. I keep feeling an apology forming inside them. Not the kind of apology that asks for immediate forgiveness. The kind that simply acknowledges the truth. The kind that says, I understand why you're hurt. I understand why you pulled away. I understand why trust became difficult. And for the first time, those words feel genuine. Not because they're trying to get something from you. Because they're finally being honest with themselves. The sun appears beside judgment, and wow, this feels like someone stepping fully out of confusion. Not because every problem has disappeared. Not because every answer has arrived. But because they finally understand what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. I keep seeing them look back over this entire journey and realizing something surprisingly simple. They searched for answers in other people's opinions. They searched for reassurance in outside voices. They searched for certainty everywhere except the one place they should have looked, their own heart. And every road seems to lead them back to the same realization. The person they couldn't stop talking about. The person they couldn't stop thinking about. The person they couldn't quite let go of was you, Leo. And that truth is becoming far too powerful for them to ignore any longer. And maybe that's the biggest message coming through today, Leo. Sometimes people don't realize what they have until they've listened to every voice except their own. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives slowly, through reflection, through regret, through the quiet moments when there's nobody left to blame and nowhere left to run. What I'm seeing here is someone who may finally be ready to face what they've been avoiding for a very long time. Whether they choose to act on it is part of their journey. But one thing feels clear. The way they see you now is very different from the way they saw you before. As always, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Trust your own intuition above anything else. That's all I've got for you for this reading. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I truly appreciate every single one of you. Leo, you mean a lot to me, and I'll see you again in the next reading. Until then, take care of yourself, keep shining your light, and never forget your worth. Okay.
Bye-bye.